I am a fan fiction writer. I'm 62 years old. I started this when I was, I want to say it was 2 years before he passed, so 2011. In my 50s. That's about the closest I can get. My brain is Swiss cheese these days. I started it because I had read a cracked article about different types of fan fiction, the worst they saw. And a couple of the stories really piqued my interest. So I looked up the authors of those particular stories and fell into fanfic.net and thought, ooh, this is interesting. Maybe I can do something with this, because I had read all the Harry Potter books once. Once was enough. Thank you very much. It was my first forays into fan fiction were not great. I took a little while to find my voice, but when I found my voice, it took off. My stories took off like nobody's business. At the moment now, I have, I think, upwards of 39, 40 works in progress, and I have like 80 something stories on my feed. I publish on AO3. I got rid of fanfic.net, pulled everything down because they don't protect the writers. They don't do anything for the writers. They used to have it so that you could, block guests if you didn't want guest reviews, and now you can't even do that. And they're toxic. The site, the people who frequent the site are toxic. That toxicity chased a lot of really good writers off the site and into the arms of AO3, who have a stable of lawyers on standby anytime somebody wants to make trouble. They take firm action against abuse to the writers, and they've now instituted a policy. I was getting spam, for lack of a better term, in the guise of comments saying, "Hey, I love your stuff. Your story is great. How about we do a collab? I'll do some art for you for money." Spam. So they worked out a way to get rid of that. They work very hard to protect their writers, because they are fanfic writers, readers, lovers themselves. They're not a corporation. They're not involved with anybody in any way. They survive and subsist through generous donations from everybody who reads and everybody who writes. Anywho, as you can probably see over my right shoulder, this is my work area. I have taken to doing crap loads of research. I have a really hard time figuring out different types of names for different types of ancillary characters. Aurors and meta wizards and professors, that kind of thing. So what I've been doing is I've been going online and looking into movies and TV shows, anime, sometimes written fiction, to find character names that match the job description. And my readers love it. I'll pop in a name from a TV show or a movie or a book or an anime, and they're like, "Oh my God, I love these little pop culture nuggets you pop into it's like Easter eggs." So yeah, that's what it is. As you can see, I've got one for just research. That's different kinds of laws, weapons laws in the UK, ballistics, information, all kinds of good stuff there. Next is general character names and nicknames. I looked up a bunch of different full names that the nickname Harry could be attached to. Roman gods, Roman rulers and emperors for the names from Malfoy relatives or Snape relatives, that kind of thing. School is different lists of teachers by profession, by degree, and I also called for people who have ESP for mind arts like occlumency and legilimency, and psychics for Trelawney's divination and that kind of stuff. There's addresses. I found a really interesting website, Mad as a Fish website. The woman did extensive research comparing the books to her areas in England and figured out where the addresses are for each character's home. So I just did the same thing. I took her information, extrapolated it, found homes for sale or abandoned homes, that kind of thing. There's also a list of abandoned castles worldwide. It's all kinds of good stuff. Deserted islands. There are over 1,000 deserted islands. Oh dear God, it took me forever to fill those lists out. Potions, ingredients, and then there's journalism and law and order. That's just the information. I've also got, wait for it, magical creatures. I've got a whole book full of all different kinds of magical creatures that were featured on movies, TV shows, and sometimes in books. And then we have these lovely things. These are, I've got one right here. These are my story notebooks. I get an idea, I write it down, then agonize over a title for about 10, 15 minutes, sometimes hours, depends, sometimes days. And then I write down the initial outline of what I would like the story to do. And then as I write the story, as I post a chapter, and I get the feedback for it, sometimes someone will bring up an idea in a comment, saying, hey, look, it would be interesting if you did this, or wouldn't it be cool, or I'd really like to see, and if the idea is interesting enough, I'll take it and run with it, and then I give that particular commenter credit for the idea. They make corrections. They let me know that when I've screwed the pooch, if I've screwed up a timeline, or if in one part of the story I had this and then now all of a sudden it's this, and I will go back and correct it. And again, I will acknowledge their invaluable assistance in a note at the top of the chapter, because no author, I don't care, and J.K. Rowling should have learned this. She should have done something to include other people, because let's face it, her characters are one-dimensional and about as flat as the paper they're written on. And no, you can't include everything, but dear Lord, the fact that she has absolutely no concept of human interactions and human relations and how humans act under certain circumstances, it's mind-boggling. But then again, if you look at her Twitter feeds, anyway, we're getting off topic. I am not arrogant enough, conceited enough, full of myself enough to believe that I am infallible. Never have been, never will be. I've made plenty of mistakes and paid dearly for quite a few of them. So when they say, oh, hey, look, shouldn't this be this instead? I'm like, I'm on it. Thank you very much. I fixed it. Because without the involvement of the people who read my stories, without the involvement of the people who are willing to comment and say, hey, look, or I love this story, I would really love to see, or wouldn't it be interesting if it wasn't for them, these stories would not be half as good as they are. I love the people who read my stories. I love the people who comment on my stories. They are my community. I'm not a social person. This is where I live most of the time. I interact with my kids fairly regularly, but this is my space. And I don't socialize because I'm not a people person. Never have been, never will be. Even when I was a kid. But these people are my community. These people are my family, for lack of a better term. So I rely on them just as much as they rely on my stories. Because a lot of them tell me that my stories sometimes help them get through some really hard times. And I appreciate that, because writing those stories helps me get through some really hard times. It's a way for me to express some of the anger, some of the pain, some of the rage that I still feel from childhood and from the loss of so much of my family. These stories help me breathe, especially when I can't. And sometimes I get to a point where I can't. And then the people who respond to each chapter help me breathe. Sorry. Anywho, this is my life as a fan fiction writer. I'm not going to name drop. I'm not going to tell you what my pseudonym is or any of that stuff. I'm not pandering or peddling for readers. You read it or you don't. You like fan fiction or you don't. I don't particularly care one way or the other. We all have our weirdnesses. Some of us weirder than others, but we all have our thing. So